खेड़ा यहाँ पर दिखाई दे रहे हैं आपको, और ये जो ग्राउंड स्टाफ है वो चारों तरफ आपको नजर आ रहा होगा। फिलहाल जो फ्लाइट है वो यहाँ पर खड़ी है, तमाम जो यात्री हैं वो नीचे उतर चुके हैं, कांग्रेस के नेता नारेबाजी कर रहे हैं। और इस वक्त आलम यह है कि दिल्ली से रायपुर जा रही फ्लाइट अपनी जगह पर खड़ी है और नहीं जा पा रही।
News coming in now, and Indigo, which is the airline, has now issued a statement. They have come out and confirmed that one of the passengers was deplaned. They haven't named Pawan Khera, but we do know the Congress has confirmed that it was Pawan Khera who was deplaned from that flight from Delhi to Raipur. The flight is delayed, is what Indigo has now come out and confirmed. Ridhima, my colleague, joining us for more details. Now, Ridhima, even as Indigo has issued this statement, if you could put this in perspective for our viewers, when exactly this flight was scheduled to leave, and how long has it been since the other passengers have already been waiting for?
Hello, Namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Are India and China working on a reset? A Chinese minister is coming to New Delhi soon. An Indian diplomat is in Beijing as more than 100,000 soldiers remain deployed on the border. Where does the relationship stand? We'll break it down for you tonight. In Iran, two pictures tell the story of Western hypocrisy on the hijab and women's rights. In Russia, the men leading Putin's war are fighting each other. The chief of the Wagner Group says Russia's top generals should be tried for treason. In the US, the toxic leak from the Ohio train derailment has hit the White House. Joe Biden is being slammed for his response. But why is the US press playing it down? Also a story on how robot bees could save our planet. The headlines first. The US says it can't keep up with China's shipbuilding capacity. America's naval secretary wants Washington to upgrade its fleet. China has the world's largest fleet. China censors ChatGPT, tells big tech companies not to offer it on Chinese social media apps because Beijing believes artificial intelligence spreads propaganda. The Israel-Gaza border heats up again. Israel conducts airstrikes as rockets rain from Gaza. 11 Palestinians have been killed, over 100 injured in West Bank. Egypt and the UN are trying to broker peace. Erdogan continues to crack down on dissent. Turkey finds 3 private broadcasters. This is for criticizing the government's response to the earthquakes that killed more than 46,000 people. In Nigeria, a Senate candidate has been shot dead just days before the country heads to polls. He was from Peter Obi's Labour Party, which is tipped to break the stranglehold of Nigeria's traditional politicians. And astronomers discover 6 giant galaxies that existed just 500 to 700 million years after the Big Bang. These massive galaxies formed far earlier than thought possible, calling into question existing models of how the universe began. The galaxies are being called universe breakers. What's the most important thing in diplomacy? Most experts would agree it is leverage, the ability to use a situation to gain maximum advantage. Today, India has some leverage over China. It holds the presidencies of 2 important alliances, the G20, or the group of top 20 economies of the world, and the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. India is in the driver's seat, it has leverage, and so China perhaps feels the need to talk to India. China is part of both these groups, the G20 and the SCO, which means the Chinese president has 2 opportunities to visit India this year. But can he do it? Can Xi Jinping come to India when his troops are challenging Indian sovereignty on the border? It would be uncomfortable, to say the least. So Beijing could be trying to repair some of the damage. A thaw could be in the works. A reset, if not a thaw. An Indian diplomat has traveled to Beijing. And this will be the first such gesture in almost 4 years. But before I proceed, just look at the backdrop of this visit. The India-China border situation is far from resolved. It's been 3 years since the Galwan clash, no resolution. But the events of last evening are hinting at a possible reset. An important meeting was held to solve the border impasse. And what was this about? The WMCC, the Working Mechanism for Consultation and Coordination on Border Affairs. It sounds complicated, but it's actually quite simple. It's a mechanism to resolve the border issues. And this was not their first meeting. The WMCC has met 25 times before. Yesterday's meeting was meeting number 26. 11 such meetings were held during the border standoff. But all of them were online. They were all held through video conference. Yesterday's meeting happened in person and China hosted it, which is what makes it even more significant. Now, what was discussed in the meeting? India and China reviewed the border situation, specifically the western sector. You see, the India-China border is divided into three sectors: western, middle and eastern. The western sector is the border between Ladakh and Xinjiang, over 2,100 kilometers long. This is where Aksai Chin is. This is also where Galwan is. And this sector was the focus of the conversation yesterday. They took up proposals for disengagement. And what was the result of the meeting? No resolution, but plans for more conversations, we are told. I have a statement from India's Ministry of External Affairs. Listen to this. This is what they've said. To restore peace and tranquility in accordance with the existing bilateral agreements and protocols, they agreed to hold the next 18th round of the senior commanders meeting at an early stage. So the long-delayed military-level dialogue could soon happen. The last round was held in December. That was right after a fresh round of clashes. It happened in the Tawang region. The Tawang region along the border. This is the birthplace of the 6th Dalai Lama and an important pilgrimage center for Buddhists. This was the most serious skirmish since Galwan. The Galwan clash happened 3 years ago, remember. 20 Indian soldiers were killed in action. The situation still remains tense. There have been multiple rounds of talks. China has disengaged from 3 standoff points. But reports say that disengagement is yet to happen at 3 more points. The troop deployment is at an all-time high, the highest level in peacetime. Each side has at least 50,000 soldiers at the border, which means a total of more than 100,000 soldiers are at the India-China border as we speak, 100,000 plus. So there is tension and a deadlock. Can the fresh round of talks ease the situation? We can only be cautiously optimistic. You see, the India-China relationship is at an all-time low. The border standoff ended all bilateral exchanges. Last year, Beijing attempted an outreach. At least 2 senior diplomats visited New Delhi. The first was Wang Yi, China's top diplomat, and the second was Yu Xiaoyong, China's special envoy for Afghanistan. They both came one after the other, but New Delhi did not reciprocate. That changed yesterday. An Indian delegation was welcomed in Beijing. It shows that both sides are willing to talk. It's a positive development. But knowing China, it's not over even after it's over. And speaking of diplomacy, sometimes it can go horribly wrong. Our next story is a tale of 2 pictures. It lays bare the Western hypocrisy over women's choice and freedom. Take a look at these 2 pictures first. The first one shows a child beaten up by the Iranian police. What was her crime? She wasn't wearing the hijab, the head covering or headscarf worn by Muslim women. This child was not wearing it, and she was punished. It looks shocking, but it's not the worst of it. Nearly 500 people have been killed for this. It's one of the most brutal crackdowns in modern-day history in Iran. The protest has been on since September last year. That's when Masha Amini was killed. She was 22 years old. She died in the custody of Iran's morality police. What was her crime? Not that she wasn't wearing a hijab, because she was. She was killed because she wasn't wearing it properly. Now let's talk about the second picture. Do you see the woman? She's Switzerland's envoy to Iran, Nadine Olivieri-Lausanne. She is wearing a long black veil covering her head and her whole body. It's called a chadar. The Swiss envoy wore the chadar while visiting the shrine, a shrine in the city of Qom, barely 100 kilometers from the capital, Tehran. The same Tehran which has been the epicenter of the anti-hijab protests. Why was she wearing the covering? Reports say she wanted to familiarize herself with Islamic culture and art and the architecture of the shrine. And this at a time when Iran is literally at war with its women. The regime's brutal crackdown on the anti-hijab protesters has left so many people blinded, wounded and jailed, if not dead. So take a moment and try to understand the message such a picture sends, both to the authoritarian regime and to the protesters. And by the way, in our own country, Switzerland, face coverings are banned. You can be fined up to $1,000 if you violate it. And that is why this photo is the perfect example of hypocrisy. The West has condemned the crackdown in Iran. They've asked the Ibrahim Raisi government to stop the atrocities. They've expressed their support for the protesters. They've hailed the rights of women. So far, so good. But Europe and America are very good with saying the right things. Because words, as we all know, are cheap and easy. Walking that talk, though, is a different ballgame. Actions require real commitment. The Swiss ambassador could have spoken up for the Iranian women. Instead, she allowed herself to be used as a propaganda tool by the Raisi regime. Soon after her visit, hardliners in the Iranian media hailed her. Just look at these headlines. Swiss ambassador in Iran wears chadar. Swiss ambassador's visit to Our Lady Mosume shrine in dazzling hijab. This is the narrative, and this is extremely problematic. As problematic as calling the hijab a choice. It is not a choice. Not for the women in Iran and Afghanistan and many other societies. It is an imposition. Calling it an individual expression, calling it a personal choice hurts them, it hurts their cause. It wasn't a choice for Masha Amini. A young woman's life was snuffed out because of rules made by old men who are completely out of touch with reality. The tone-deaf optics of the Swiss ambassador have ironically lifted the veil on Western hypocrisy over women's rights. Because the road to righteousness for Europe and America is paved with convenience. And as they continue with their platitudes and sermons, the Iranian regime is going to extremes to snuff out the protests. But they haven't succeeded. The protests continue to grow, led by women, school-going girls, and even men. It's a David versus Goliath battle, but one that Iranian women and girls are determined to fight. And while autocrats can coerce the so-called mighty Western leaders into embarrassing photo ops to further their agenda, they cannot break the defiance of a scared little girl who is not afraid to find her voice and show her bloodied face, because not all superheroes wear capes. Sometimes they appear as little girls taking off their hijabs. As the war in Ukraine continues, Russia is fighting a war within. Men who are leading Putin's invasion, and yes, they're all men, they're at odds. On one side is the Wagner Group, the mercenaries controlled by Kremlin. On the other are Russian generals. The first salvo came from Yevgeny Prigozhin. He is the head of the Wagner Group. He says Russia's generals have committed treason.
The chief of the General Staff, Valery Gerasimov, and the Minister of Defense, Sergei Shoigu, are issuing order after order forbidding to provide ammunition to Wagner Private Military Company and help it with air transport. There is simply direct opposition going on, which is nothing else but an attempt to destroy Wagner Private Military Company. This can be equated to high treason.
High treason, he said. He claims the generals are withholding munitions from his fighters and that they're doing this intentionally. What does Moscow have to say in response? The Russian Defense Ministry issued a statement. It says these claims are quote-unquote absolutely false. But the Wagner chief is not backing down. Prigozhin, better known as Putin's chef, is escalating this fight. Let me show you some pictures, and before I do that, here's a warning. These pictures are graphic. We advise viewer discretion. These are dead Wagner soldiers. Prigozhin released this photograph himself. He says these troops died because of quote-unquote shell hunger. It's a reference to the shortage of ammunition. And there's a video too. Look at this now. Dozens of coffins. These are bodies of fighters from the Wagner Group. Each coffin has a death certificate with the name of the fighter and the Russian region they're from. By releasing these, Prigozhin is openly challenging Russia's defense establishment. And in the process, he's also making a name for himself. Last month, Russia took control of a village in Ukraine. It's called Klishivka, an important suburb of Bakhmut, a city that is on the receiving end of the latest Russian offensive. Now, guess who led the charge here? The Wagner Group. They were at the forefront. Prigozhin released a message to take credit. Listen to what he said. We can safely say that the settlement of Klishivka, which is one of the important suburbs of Bakhmut, has been completely taken under the control of Wagner PMC units. Exclusively by Wagner PMC units, Klishivka has been liberated. Notice what he said. He emphasized on the word exclusive. Remember, Wagner is not the Russian army. It is a private company of mercenaries, but now it is capturing the Russian mind space. Take a look at this now. This is Sergei Mironov, a prominent Russian lawmaker. He is posing with a sledgehammer. He got it from the Wagner group. But why a sledgehammer? Well, it's become a symbol of vengeance for Wagner. Last year, they used a sledgehammer on a fighter who defected. He was murdered. Mironov is a former paratrooper himself. He has hailed the Wagner group, calling it a heroic military formation. So the Wagner group is becoming both popular and powerful in Russia. And it's taking on the Russian army. More significantly, Vladimir Putin does not seem to mind it. He hasn't spoken about this power struggle. Prigozhin is a close associate of Putin. Earlier, his restaurants used to supply food to the Kremlin, which is how he got the nickname Putin's chef. He was rewarded for his loyalty. From catering, he jumped to the private military business. He created Wagner in the year 2014. It is now the de facto private military service for the Kremlin. And by the looks of it, it is now spearheading the offensive in Ukraine. Meanwhile, Pakistan continues to roll out the red carpet for terrorists. The latest one to be spotted was Syed Salahuddin, the chief of terror outfit Hizbul Mujahideen. He was seen roaming freely in Rawalpindi. What was he doing there? Well, apart from the fact that Rawalpindi is the headquarters of his guardians, the Pakistani army, Salahuddin was there to attend a funeral. The funeral of top Hizbul commander Bashir Ahmad Peer, another terrorist who was wanted in India. Peer was shot dead in Pakistan a few days back. At his funeral prayer, Salahuddin made a pledge to destroy India until Kashmir was free. That's what he said. He was flanked by Pakistani soldiers and cheered by the crowds. And frankly, none of this is news to us. The Pakistani establishment's love for terrorists is not new. But we must bring you this report for the benefit of the FATF and the rest of the world. The FATF is the Financial Action Task Force, the so-called global watchdog on terrorism. It dropped Pakistan from its grey list recently. The FATF was content with Pakistan's progress. We say this video is proof of Pakistan's progress, giving terrorists a free run and cheering them when they vow to destroy India. Watch this. The streets of Rawalpindi saw terror group Hizbul Mujahideen lose its top commander this week. Bashir Ahmad Peer was shot dead by an assailant on Monday evening. Peer is said to have provided logistics to terrorists, those who attacked the Kashmir Valley. India had designated him as a terrorist last year. This week, his funeral was held. Reports say ISI officials were in attendance, and so was the chief of Hizbul Mujahideen, Syed Salahuddin. It's a rare appearance. A video of Salahuddin purportedly from the funeral prayer is going viral. What is the video about? A call to destroy India.
हमें आज अहद करना है खून के आखिरी कतरे तक इंशाअल्लाह वतन अजीज की आजादी तक और भारत की बर्बादी तक हमारा जिहाद फी सबीलिल्लाह हर कीमत पर जारी रहेगा.
Flanked by Pakistani soldiers, Salahuddin got a rousing applause for his pledge. And this isn't the first time. He's been part of the Hizbul Mujahideen since 1989. The cause they espouse is straightforward and sinister: Kashmir's occupation by Pakistan. Salahuddin also heads the so-called United Jihadi Council. It's a collection of 13 separatist organizations. The Hizbul Mujahideen has taken responsibility for several attacks in Jammu and Kashmir in the past. In May 2017, it killed 7 people while attacking a bank in Kashmir. In April 2014, 17 people were injured after it launched 2 grenades in Kashmir's Birwa. Salahuddin has been on India's radar for long. In 2017, he was designated a terrorist by the United States. Listen to what he said then. We have launched attacks against Indian forces and security installations and will continue to do so. We can strike anywhere in India at the time of our choosing. In 2021, he released an audio message threatening India and sought the Taliban's help to spread terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir. Now he's walking free in Rawalpindi, one of the many terrorists supported by the Pakistani state. In fact, Pakistan's track record of sheltering terrorists is an open secret, a fact that global institutions refuse to acknowledge. The FATF, or the Financial Action Task Force, took Pakistan off its grey list last year. It had been on the list since 2018 because it failed to curb terror financing. In October 2022, the global terrorism watchdog said it was happy with Pakistan's progress in fighting terror groups. We are satisfied after an FATF inspection team went down, spoke to the authorities, took a look and verified, and they were satisfied that there's a high level of political commitment on the part of the Pakistani authorities to not just implement the current set of action steps that they need to take, but they're also committed to ongoing reform. But Salahuddin's presence in Rawalpindi shows Pakistan's commitment of another kind, that of harboring wanted terrorists. Some reports say that India is expected to approach the FATF to inform them about what Islamabad is up to. The FATF too in the past has assured New Delhi that it will keep an eye on Pakistan. After all, Islamabad and its romance with terrorism is a love story that only spreads hate. This week has been dominated by one image, the picture of Joe Biden with his aviators walking around the streets of Kiev and air sirens blaring. Now let me show you another image. While Biden was showboating with Zelensky, Ohio was grappling with this disaster, a massive mishap that put lives at risk. A train derailed in Ohio this month. It happened in a village called East Palestine. It's a small village, just 5,000 odd residents. But this train crash is a big story worldwide because it is a chemical disaster. The crashed train spewed out toxic chemicals, chemicals that have been linked to diseases like cancer. An entire community was exposed to the black smoke. The people are worried. They don't know if the air is safe to breathe or the water is safe to drink. Some people are falling sick.
I've been getting headaches, sore throats, my nose running, my eye crying constantly, like burning, itchy.
I don't feel safe taking my kids into town, especially to the house. Like my neighbor right across the street from me literally got diagnosed yesterday with chemical pneumonia. I have a baby right here. She's 3 months old. And I have a 2-year-old son. They can't tell me, you know, if they're lightheaded or if their stomach hurts or if their eyes burn, anything like that.
There are more horror stories. One resident found his chickens dead. 6 of them died a day after the chemicals leaked. Another resident saw dead fish floating in a local creek. And going by one claim, thousands of fish have died. This toxic leak is being called America's Chernobyl. It's a horror show for sure. It began almost a month back. But where is Joe Biden? Nowhere to be seen. The US president did not want to deal with this headache. 2 days back, he tweeted, "This is their mess. They should clean it up." Biden asked the rail company to take over. But is that good enough? The residents don't think so. The mayor of East Palestine says Biden doesn't care about them. During an interview, he was asked about it, about Biden's visit to Kiev. And listen to what he said. "Absolutely, that was the biggest slap in the face. That tells you right now he doesn't care about us. He can send every agency he wants to, but I found out this morning that he was in Ukraine giving millions of dollars away to people over there and not to us. On President's Day in our country, I'm so furious." A slap in the face, he says. That's how the mayor of this region saw Biden's visit to Kiev. Donald Trump is making that point too. Unlike Joe Biden, he paid a visit to Ohio. He met the first responders and he visited the derailment site. He called out the president's indifference.
When I announced that I was coming, they changed their tune. It was an amazing phenomena. They were intending to do absolutely nothing for you. What this community needs now are not excuses and all of the other things you've been hearing, but answers and results.
Trump had his own reasons to go. He wants to win back the White House next year. But his visit has woken up Team Biden. The president still won't go, but his transport secretary is traveling to Ohio. And look at how many days it took. The train crash happened on the 3rd of February. Today is the 23rd. 20 days. The Biden administration took 20 days to send a senior cabinet member. And the locals say it's still not enough.
Hopefully, like the attention that it kind of brought onto us will help a little bit. It kind of sucks, like, he came before the actual president did.
Actions speak louder than words at this point. Trump coming out, where's Biden? He's not here.
Where's Biden? He's not here. Those words sum up this story. The US president was known as Middle Class Joe. He built a career by projecting himself as a leader for the middle class. His presidential campaign stuck to the same message. Biden promised a foreign policy for the middle class. That's how he put it. But the US president seems to have lost track. He's more worried about defeating Putin, while his own citizens try to survive dangerous chemicals. And what about the American media, the likes of the New York Times? What are they saying? They say the derailment is a subject of quote-unquote wild speculation. Others say it's overblown characterization. Exaggerated claims are driving conspiracy theories. So let me ask you this. When the air smells like chemicals, when people start falling sick, when so many fish turn up dead, is it mere speculation? And we're curious because the same press is quick to point out grave environmental risks in other countries. They become activists targeting new projects. But what happened here? Yes, one should not jump to conclusions or exaggerate threats. An investigation is underway. It will determine the extent of the health risk. But playing down the story and ignoring the ground reality helps no one, except Joe Biden, of course. From Ohio, we shift our focus to Seattle, a city in the American state of Washington, a city which is being hailed for banning caste-based discrimination. It has become the first American city to do so. No other city in the US has specifically outlawed caste-based discrimination. And why is that? Because caste was never thought to be a big issue in the country. In the state of Washington alone, Indians constitute just 2% of the population. And why have I mentioned only Indians? Because that's who Seattle's decisions could affect the most. You see, there are two sides to every story, and this one is no different. While discrimination on any basis, including caste, is wrong, and India banned it some 7 decades ago, the decision in Seattle is being called controversial, even Hindu-phobic. An Indian origin senator is complaining, and the Indian community is not happy. Here's why.
Clerk, please read item 1 into the record.
How many communities in the world are known to practice caste-based discrimination? Not many. But Indians are somehow stereotyped as people whose lives revolve around caste. At least that's the image of Indians in the West. Hindus especially. Is caste a problem in India? Yes, it is. A lot of our politics revolves around it. Is it an issue in the United States? There have been isolated instances where people have spoken out against being treated differently because of their caste. Now, the Seattle City Council has added caste to the city's anti-discrimination laws. Caste-based discrimination has effectively been banned by an ordinance. The ordinance was proposed by the council's only Indian-American member, Shama Sawant. She said, and I quote, "Caste discrimination doesn't only take place in other countries. It's faced by South Asian American and other immigrant working people in their workplaces, including in the tech sector, in Seattle and in cities around the country." The supporters of the ordinance are thrilled, but some Hindu Americans aren't. They say they're being singled out and the community is being unfairly maligned. The Hindu American Foundation shot off an open letter in which it said, "The city of Seattle has voted to treat South Asians in a manner that no other ethnic or racial community is treated, under the guise of non-discrimination. It has voted yes to discriminating against ethnic minorities, repeating the ugliness of nativists in the state nearly a century ago." The letter also referred to a study by the Carnegie Endowment and said incidents of caste discrimination in the US are rare. The Coalition of Hindu Americans of North America said, "This ordinance peddles bigotry and singles out the South Asian community by using racist colonial tropes of caste and ensures that our community is subject to special scrutiny, thus denying our rights to freedom of religion and equal protection." And Indian American State Senator from Ohio, Neeraj Antani, said, "Adding caste to their non-discrimination policy is Hindu-phobic and is a tool those that are anti-Hindu use to discriminate against Hindus in America, in India and around the world." Why is this new ordinance being called Hindu-phobic? Because some American Hindus believe it will be used to target them. Let's first understand how caste made news in the US. In 2020, Cisco was sued by the state of California. For what? For allowing an Indian American employee to be harassed by his managers because of his caste. This is when caste discrimination became a buzzword in the US. Now Seattle has passed a law, and some Hindus feel they'll be unfairly exposed to a lot of scrutiny. Remember, this comes even as the US has failed to stop racism, which is a much bigger structural issue in the country. Black people continue to face intense attacks. They're even killed, not by civilians, but by law enforcement officials. So the question is, was American law not equipped to tackle caste-based discrimination all these years? If it was, why did Seattle have to get an ordinance passed? Will it, ironically, expose Hindus and South Asians to discrimination of another kind? To say caste bias is not a problem would be a lie. To say it's rampant in the US may be off the mark. Seattle's law may or may not fix the problem, but some Hindus in America are concerned it will turn them into targets.
Now to a land on which the sun never sets. Or it didn't until a while ago, but times change. At its zenith, the UK was a colonial beast. Today it finds itself in dire straits. Britons are living in desperate times. Supermarkets are running out of supplies. Monthly savings are sharply plummeting. Children are skipping meals. Students are considering dropping out. And a record number of families are now depending on food banks to get something to eat. Who would have thought that this would become of the once great Britain? Our next report delves into the UK's cost of living crisis and how it is impacting the British society. The year was 1913. The British Empire ruled over 412 million people around the world. That meant 23% of the world's population was under British control. Its empire stretched over 24% of the Earth's total area. It was unparalleled power. Cut to 2023. This is what supermarkets in the UK look like. Shelves wear a deserted look. Fruits and vegetables are being rationed. Most of the country's supermarket chains, the likes of Tesco, Asda and Morrisons, have resorted to unprecedented rationing. Customers can now buy just 3 units of tomatoes, peppers and cucumbers. The sale of lettuce, broccoli, cauliflower and other vegetables has been curbed too. The government blames bad weather in Europe and Africa for this. This is the time of the year when the UK imports more than 90% of its tomatoes and peppers. But the crisis is unique to the UK. And Europeans are making it a point to remind Britons about that. On social media, European Union citizens pointed out that vegetable supplies in their countries had not been disrupted due to bad weather. The cost of living crisis is taking a big toll on the people of Britain. A record number of them are now dependent on food banks. What are food banks? Mostly voluntary and charity-driven organizations that give free food to underprivileged people. Almost 90% of British food banks have reported a steep rise in demand over the past 3 months. If demand rises further, they'll have to turn people away. Pensioners and families with babies have been hit particularly hard. Students are being forced to skip meals to save money. Reports say almost 62% students are spending less on food and essentials. Students are eating 2 meals a day and working part-time jobs to make ends meet. Many of them are reaching out to their families for financial help. Others even considering dropping out of their courses. On the brighter side, inflation is slowly easing, but food inflation still stands at 16.3%. British households could see a fall of over 4% in their disposable incomes this year, the largest drop since records began in 1956. And the impact is already visible. According to a study by Aldermore Bank, the average Briton is saving half the amount of money they did compared to last year. A third of British savers say their financial situation is not sustainable and that they haven't saved anything over the last year. Britons have reduced shopping for non-essential goods, they're socializing less, and they've cut down on using their cars. What you just saw were visuals of school children taking part in the strike organized by teachers earlier this month. Strikes have become a weekly affair of sorts. From healthcare workers to teachers to even railway workers organizing mammoth strikes and walkouts. What are they striking against? The high cost of living. While the costs have risen, their salaries have not. Our next story is something worth buzzing about. Robo-bees. Now, bees are essential to people and the planet. It's a commonly known fact. They were revered by ancient Egyptians. glorified by Shakespeare and feared by Winnie the Pooh. Love them or loathe them, you can't disagree that they're crucial to our existence. Honeybees perform 80% of pollination worldwide, which means they play a role in 90% of the world's nutrition. But here's another commonly known fact about them. Bees are under threat like never before. Stories about their declining population trickle through the news cycle regularly. Listen to these facts. Currently, 1 in 10 bee species faces the threat of extinction. In the US, bees declined by over 72% in the last 25 years. During the same time, over 40% of honeybees in India disappeared. This is thanks to intensive modern farming methods, also the consequences of climate change. But there's growing concern about other pollinators too. Butterflies, wasps, and beetles. Their populations are diminishing drastically the world over. 1 in 10 butterfly species, 1 in 3 hoverfly species face the threat of extinction. So what are we doing about this pollination crisis? Thinking outside the hive, creating our own pollinators. Researchers from Finland's Tampere University have hit a milestone. They've developed a tiny robot fly. It's called Fairy. It could revolutionize farming, they say. So what will Fairy do? As the name suggests, this Fairy too can fly. Inspired by dainty dandelion seeds, it weighs just 1.2 mg. It is controlled by light, such as a laser beam or an LED, which means light can be used to change its shape. And this will allow it to adapt to the wind's direction. It's a wirelessly controlled soft body robot. It is made of specific soft polymers. They're responsive to external stimuli. But it's not the first robot to use this material. In recent years, similar miniature robots have been created. These include a swimming fish and walking delivery bots. They too can be controlled with light. So why is the robo-bee such a big deal? Because engineers have used these materials to make similar robots walk, swim, and jump. But no one so far has been able to make them fly. The Finnish researchers do not plan to stop here. They plan to keep developing this robo-bee, Fairy, till 2026. They want to make improvements. They want the robot to be able to operate in sunlight. They also want it to carry sensors and GPS. The researchers say this could revolutionize farming as we know it. Millions of artificial fairies carrying pollen could be used. They will be dispersed in the wind, then steered by light towards plants awaiting pollination. It could have a huge impact on agriculture, but it's not easy as it sounds. There are challenges too, like controlling the landing spot in a precise way, making the devices reusable and biodegradable. Regardless, it sounds like fascinating sci-fi, and this is not the only robot bee in the works. Human working bees are developing their own pollinators. An Israel-based AI firm developed such robots. They can autonomously travel. They can use AI and cameras to identify plants that are ready for pollination. Then they blast air at the flowers to pollinate them. Researchers in the US are at it too. The robot revolution is speeding up. Farmers in many countries, in fact, have already started deploying these robots. It seems we are already living in the future. We thought robots could be coming for our jobs. But guess they're also going after the bees. No one knows if this is a long-term solution for agriculture or for our honey-producing friends. But for now, we think it will stick. Our last story today is about dating. Yes, you heard me right. Whether you've played the field or not, you must know that dating can be tough. But do you know what's even more difficult? Dating jargon. Listen to this. You're cobwebbing after your previous failed relationship. You thought they had riz, but they began love bombing you. Soon you distance yourself. It turned into a textationship and eventually fizzled out. How much of that did you understand? If you're confused, we can relate. These days, describing yourself as single or committed just doesn't cut it. We're caught in a label soup. Social media and dating apps have altered not just modern dating, but also its language, and it can be difficult to keep up. So we've tried our best to decode the lingo of modern love, because dating jargon, like dating itself, should be easy. Our next report gives you a crash course.
The way we seek romantic connections has changed. Social media and dating apps have played a key role here. 49% of people across the world have tried online dating, India is part of this global phenomenon. A dating app was one of the top 5 downloads in India last year. This has altered not only dating behavior, but also its language. For a generation that dislikes labels, it's ironic that Gen Z is stuck in a heady mix of dating jargon. Feel like a dinosaur in the world of modern dating? Don't worry. Our glossary of the most popular terms may be able to help. Let's begin. One of the modern dating terms is textationship. As the name suggests, it's about texting. It refers to relationships built around it. If your partner's always available to talk over text, but never ready to meet in person, just know that you're in a textationship. It's quick and convenient. We've heard about minimalist living, but when did we sign up for minimalist dating? The second word is full of irony. It's about easy breezy dating, but it can also be the most frustrating. We're talking about situationship. This is when neither parties define the status of their relationship. It can be a tad bit confusing, and not to mention, it lacks the support that a defined relationship can bring, though it works for some. If you're past the situationship stage, the next word could be helpful. One may say it launches a new relationship. It's called soft launching. Basically, it's romantic PR. It includes posting a discreet photo or video of your new partner on Instagram or other social media platforms. You can see examples of this floating on your feed. A picture of someone's date with their head casually turned away, or showing someone's hand holding yours. Let's face it, social media is practically the third wheel of new relationships. Talking about social media, the fourth word is Riz. It's been making waves on TikTok and Instagram Reels. It's a fancier word for charisma. The fifth word we decode is a bomb full of red flags, but not the ones thrown around like confetti in a relationship. These are subtle red flags. It's called love bombing. Here, someone lavishes a new romantic partner with grand gestures. This isn't just about gifts. It can also involve constantly staying in touch. But what's the catch? The person also keeps their partner isolated from friends and family. This is a sign of a controlling relationship. Our suggestion, if you're being love bombed, do what anyone will do when they see an explosive. Run in the opposite direction. The last word is something you could do after escaping such a relationship. Cobwebbing. It's seen as an act of self-love. It refers to purging any mementos from your previous relationships. These can be your partner's hoodies, gifts, or even text messages. It's said to help with moving on from a relationship. Fact is, the way we talk about relationships has drastically changed in recent years. Newer dating platforms bring an abundance of options. There are more people to choose from. And it's easier to hide bigger parts of our personality online. New behaviors have invited newer terms. But a lot of them have their roots in habits that predate Tinder and Bumble. They're new words for old habits. Language and love have always been intimately connected. Words can influence the way we express love. Pardon the philosophy, but maybe the real Riz lies in the language your heart sparks, and not in the labels the world declares.
And finally, Vantage shots, images that tell the story. Yesterday, we showed you a video of someone falling down the stairs of the Air Force One. Today, we have US President Joe Biden stumbling on the staircase. Remember, he's 80 years old, but he was quickly up on his feet. In India, an actor escaped death by a few seconds on a film set. This is actor Vishal. He posted the dramatic escape on social media. In Peru, images of landslides hitting a city. Unfortunately, no deaths or injuries were reported. In the US, a pilot took a selfie before blowing up the Chinese spy balloon. In Japan, a balloon-shaped object surfaced on the beach. We don't know if it was Chinese or meant for spying. We're leaving you with these images. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
the native place of slain militant leader and Khalistan ideologue Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale. The ceremony marks Sandhu's official installation as the head of Waris Punjab Day. During his Dastarbandi ceremony, he allegedly openly declared Bhindranwale as his inspiration. Amritpal's demeanour, attire and oration are largely an imitation of Bhindranwale. His recent public gatherings attracted a sizable crowd. His major support base is the youth of Punjab. He typically speaks of working on larger religious and social transformation in the state. He focuses on solving the problem of drug addiction and believes that taking youth back into the Puritan form of Sikhi is also the key objective. In October last year, Amritpal Singh initiated over 1,000 people into Sikh faith and said that it would result in de-addiction within the youngsters. In November, he began a month-long journey across the state to encourage this. But what is making the establishment nervous is his open support and demand for Khalistan. Now, Amritpal Singh claims that there is a continuous genocide, quote-unquote, of Sikhs in India. Take a look at some of the controversial statements that he has made. First, he claimed that the main issue right now that Punjab is facing was slavery and India's colonial rule in the state. He goes on to say that the dilution of Sikh values, encouraging Sikhs to cut their hair and shave their beard, are all part of this quote-unquote silent genocide in Punjab. He further said that Sikh empire was lost to the British in 1849 and we are asking for that empire to be back. He further claimed that the idea of Khalistan is not for a separate state. It sounded like we were connected to something. He also says that the point is that we were forcefully taken into Indian nation by the British. There was no India before 1947. It's not just the provocative statements. Amritpal Singh and his aides have had a very questionable and objectionable history. Just 2 days ago, he threatened Union Home Minister Amit Shah and cited Prime Minister Indira Gandhi's, the former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi's fate. He was booked for kidnapping, theft, voluntarily causing hurt at a police station in Ajnala. He's not been arrested so far. In January, Amritpal Singh visited Mohali to show solidarity with those demanding the release of Bandi Sikhs who are convicted in the prison on militancy charges, very serious charges. He warned of action if the Bandi Sikhs are not released. In December last year, his supporters allegedly vandalized chairs at a Gurudwara in Jalandhar and set them on fire. And in November, police booked Bhagwant Singh, a close aide of Amritpal, for allegedly posting pictures of him holding guns on social media. One reason for Amritpal's rise is a sense of disenchantment in Punjab. There's a restless
Welcome everyone. Thanks a lot for staying with us. You're watching Plain Speak with me, Shivani Gupta. High voltage drama took place at the Delhi's International Airport today. Congress spokesperson Pawan Khera was deplaned while boarding a flight to Raipur for the Congress plenary session. He was later detained by Assam cops. Congress leaders, including Randeep Surjewala, K.C. Venugopal and Supriya Shrinate, sat on a dharna, that too on the tarmac of the airport itself. Passengers on that plane were shifted to another plane. The flight was delayed by over 3 hours. All of this comes after multiple FIRs were filed against Pawan Khera for insulting Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his late father. In a press conference, Khera had referred to the Prime Minister as Narendra Gautam Das Modi as a jibe over the Adani issue. The Congress is up in arms, alleging high-handedness by the BJP in trying to suppress their voice and also derail their preliminary session. The matter shifted to the courts later, where Khera received interim relief. Was the entire deplaned, detained and arrest drama excessive to begin with? We'll take that question to our guest joining us in just a bit. This is how the entire drama unfolded though. Pawan Khera was on an Indigo flight to Raipur when Delhi police asked Congress leader to get down from that plane and stopped him from moving forward, from flying forward. The Delhi police says that they received a request from the Assam police to do so, to stop Pawan Khera from flying out of the national capital. With no regards to the other passengers and the fact that they are on the tarmac of an international airport, Congress leader started a protest and a dharna there and thereon. Congress leaders raising anti-Modi slogans, arguing with the cops
following the detention of their colleague Pawan Khera. Right after that, Assam police reached the Delhi airport. They took custody of Pawan Khera. These are some of the visuals of Pawan Khera being escorted out of the tarmac, the airport, and eventually he was put into a vehicle as well. After detention, the Assam police were trying to take Khera to the local court for a transit remand. The Supreme Court, though, heard his matter quite urgently, even as all of this was playing out, and they were escorting Pawan Khera out and taking him to a local court, and directed that he be given an interim bail. Let's just break down what exactly happened as far as this hearing is concerned. During this hearing, Khera's counsel, Congress leader and lawyer Abhishek Manu Singhvi argued that Khera's remarks on the Prime Minister were a mistake and slip of tongue, and that he has already apologized. Additional Solicitor General Aishwarya Bhati, though, said that Khera made those derogatory remarks in a bid to incite disaffection against the Prime Minister. Singhvi then also told the court that Khera would tender an unconditional apology for his remarks on the Prime Minister. While granting the interim bail to Khera, the top court said that there has to be some level of discourse, and they're protecting the alleged victim here. The apex court will hear, though, Khera's plea to club all the FIRs against him in multiple states on Monday. A war of words erupted between the Congress and the BJP too. Congress launched a scathing attack at the centre, saying that Khera's arrest was an attempt to curb free speech. BJP hit back, saying that Khera has insulted the Prime Minister and his father and is now playing a victim card. Congress also called Khera's arrest an undeclared emergency. BJP said that if there's nothing to hide, why is he running away from a probe? And then adding that law should take its own course. The Congress, though, alleged that Khera's arrest is one in line of many actions that have been taken in an attempt to stop or derail the plenary session that the Congress is holding in Raipur. BJP trained its guns on the Congress party, saying that their only job these days is to spread chaos. The big question we're asking today, was this entire drama excessive to begin with? Was the action that was taken on Pawan Khera on a comment that he made against the Prime Minister excessive to begin with?
अभी देखते हैं, ये लंबी लड़ाई है, लड़ने को तैयार है। देखते हैं, अभी सारी जानकारी मिलेगी आपको भी।
आप देख रहे हैं कि कैसे इस बस में पवन खेड़ा जी को और रणदीप सिंह सुरजेवाला जी उनके साथ जा रहे हैं। इन लोगों को असम की पुलिस लेकर जा रही है। ये वही असम की पुलिस है जब निहत्थों पर वार होता है तो चुप रहती है। मैं पूछना चाहती हूँ, उन्होंने कौन सा ऐसा जुर्म किया है कि इनको यहाँ पर डिटेन किया जा रहा है और असम की पुलिस हरकत में आ रही है।
मैं गांधी परिवार से पूछना चाहता हूँ, ये कैसी डेमोक्रेसी है? आप देश के प्रधानमंत्री जी के पिता, स्वर्गवासी पिता के खिलाफ इस तरह के अपशब्द बोलें, गंदी भाषा का इस्तेमाल करें। किस कदर आप नीचे गिर गए हैं, और जब आपसे पूछताछ की जाए तो आप जहाजों के ऊपर